how they look and what they wanted to deserve. And so that first image where she looked at mean and impressive was what she desired. Another Easter Sunday image by Ouija, just all-night parade. Easter Sunday in 1941 with young boys emulating the men in their community from style of dress to style of clothes. And Cartier-Bresson, who is the father of the decisive moment, this image here, the brown-skinned model, as this 16-year-old young woman is walking past, and then he's looking at another man who's looking at her. And so this sense of beauty is struck in that moment. And one of my favorite images here was part of the exhibition, but was unfortunately had to be returned. And this is titled Dixie Bells by Winan, a photographer in Louisiana. Two young girls, Sunday afternoon. And then we think about 1930s, we think about the aspect of black people looking at white people. They always had to divert their eyes. But this is a man who could see, and he called like the hot Venus, these are Dixie bells. They're not just bells, they're Dixie bells. So they're Southern bells. But these young girls have pearl earrings, their straw hats, their white dresses, and looking directly into the camera, and also their hoop earrings. Teenie Harris, a photographer in Pittsburgh, had a studio for a number of years and photographed in his community, and Teenie is one with the white shoes and white hat. He photographed women often, and the men in the community, a woman with her new car, a woman in the Crawford Avenue Grill. And this, to me, is one of the significant images of beauty. We see a young photographer who's photographing a young woman who is a waitress who stops to pose. There's a busy area in the back, a woman in her evening gown, a man in his hat. But the fact that Teenie Harris is just capturing this moment, and he's also known as one-shot Teenie. He only made one shot. But we see the pencil shavings on the side, and he's not cleaning up the image, but he's actually seeing and sharing with us the work of the space, the beauty of the space, and the busy aspect of that community. An image here of Malcolm X in terms of constructing the clothes. We see Eve Arnold's photograph here, and as we imagine Eve Arnold looking at Malcolm X and remembering and reminding herself, what does this man look like when he left the house? He picked up a hat, a ring, a watch, his glasses, and then, just watching him as he was in thought. And so the range of image here we see Rosa Parks at the March for Washington with, prepared to be a part of the movement and always a part of the movement with her gloves and her pearls. The debutante ball, the importance of debutante balls, and Eve Arnold's photograph of documenting the curtsy. This image here of Muhammad Ali, this exchange of the photographer's studio, and the idea that Muhammad Ali was the one who politicized the aspect of beauty within our communities, within male community and male culture as well, as he talked about his own beauty and the notion of pretty. Range of images here also of Gordon Park. We see the cleavers in terms of Eldridge Cleaver and Kathleen Cleaver in Algeria. So range of images that I found with this story that I wanted to show, this range of image, and I love this image by Bruce Davidson. And Bruce Davidson's on Muscle Beach or Venice Beach in California, and he is behind the camera in terms of a decisive moment, looking behind the stage, looking at a woman with a brownie. This is, a middle-aged woman, her husband, the pants in his pocket. He has to experience this brownie camera and this image in his house after we go home. Just imagine that she's also documenting and seeing this beautiful, posed, brown figure. Angela Davis, and image here by Richard Avedon. We see images that, in terms of this whole Black is Beautiful moment, and images here that of Huey Newton with the Black Panther Party, to image by Jeffrey Scales, the range of men, and I thought it was important to have men a part of this story, where Jamal Shabazz photographs a young man who is showing his new Clark. 1980s, mind you. And this is a time, he said this is a project he created a time before crack. When people were, proud within their communities, posing with their new shoes and their gold chains. Images in terms of the range of stories of women, lesbians who were posing and part of the world on a London Bridge and wearing a New York City t-shirt. Here we see another woman in New York City, just on the rooftop, in charge of the world and part of the world by Lola Flash. Mickalene Thomas, just a wonderful moment in her history of looking and reflecting, of growing up in the 1970s, where her mother listened to, Diana Ross and Thelma Houston and all the women in her family and girlfriends, her mother, who visited her mother, their afros, their high heel boots, and in the panel basement. And so this experience that she's recreating this moment that was a wonder for a young girl of 6 and 7 to see just women in control. This is just a wonderful moment in terms of an exchange by Radcliffe Roy. I was going to say Ruddy Roy, that's his name, but Radcliffe Roy, and he is looking at this pose as this woman is about to enter into a space, but she left the house dressed in dance hall, ready for dance hall. But then we see that as she's walking in, that she's documented, not only for her dressing style, but she's consumed. So this is a state where women who are dressed to go out, but also documented and posed and captured in these small cameras and cell phone cameras. Prom night. This is a young girls by Bayate Ball Smith. This is the first time they can be adults. And so here, this is how they see the adults being adults. Women, the young girls could go to the prom without a date. They could have girlfriends and go to the prom together. To this young man who has a reflection of Heidi Ho. He is feeling Cab Calloway and channeling him in many ways. So this is like a moment of beauty and presence. Then finally, in this last section, the body and image, we see this range of how we reframe Black is Beautiful from the 1920s to today, where a young woman who is about to leave town, not to work as a domestic, but seeing herself as part of the stage. She has a powder brush. She has her hairstyle as part of the moment when King Tut's tomb was open, and she found images that were in the press where the style that she created, and the style is called the Tut Cut, and she is focusing on her look and the powder brush. A man with his new car, an wonderful image of James Latimer Allen looking in terms of the spirituality of Madonna, and he calls it Brown Madonna and Child. A range of images by unknown and known photographers. Here's Teenie Harris and Lena Horne, and the reflection of Lena Horne looking into the mirror, but also the fact that he's captured her in the studio, in the backstage room in the studio, as she prepares to go on stage. But we also see the importance of this moment for her, that there's a telegram stuck on the mirror. And so we capture this experience of a young woman who's about to go on stage and someone is sending her well wishes. Here she also was a poster girl for World War II and one of the pinup images and photographed and posed with a number of soldiers. And here she is on Tuskegee's campus. We see here of Eve Arnold's image, another moment in terms of beauty. And this is an encounter in the 50s where there's an encounter where blacks and whites are about to talk about civil rights movement. Young girls in the background preparing for that moment. Range of images that I wanted to include in the book, that were part of my history with sound. Jimi Hendrix and sound. Isaac Hayes, just Isaac Hayes in his studio with, striped shirts and striped, wallpaper. Just beauty, from that period. Men, from the movement, Stokely Carmichael. So we see how dress was essential to this movement, dress and style and manhood and masculinity and beauty and femininity, all a part of this moment. Here we see the wonderful work by Ken Ramsey, and here we see Susan Taylor. So, this is a photograph that's called Venus, and it's by Carla Williams, and looking at her body and placing it within the history of art. The 70s moment of style, and we see art imitating life with movies, from the blaxploitation movies to this sense of freedom. And also, Jeannie Matusume asked, photographing her own body, looking at the aspect of aging and what happens to the aging body, and also noticing the beauty and the sensuality within the aging body. So I wanted just to kind of go through some of the images that reflected the movement of beauty, and we see, coffee, we see Angela Davis on the cover of Life, we see a range of Cleopatra Jones as movie posters, the range of women, and then Ife is looking, as a young photographer, looking at ways to reframe and tell the story of women who were empowered in the 70s to clean up their communities, clean drugs out of their community, prostitution out, but using their bodies and their hairstyles and weapons. And so she's recreating women, iconic women in movies, and a photographer in New York. And Tuka Bazin, also, like the other women in terms of dance hall culture is always recreated in videos and in cell phone cameras. And here she's following a young woman who's dressed to go out for the evening, but she's followed at night with men who have these cameras. Jason Moran, also looking at the past, a wonderful musician and looking at style. And Renee Cox, here she is, flipping the script in terms of Olympia, Monet's Olympia, and others in terms of the art historical image. She's turning her back to the history of these images and taking control of what she wants her viewer to see, and what she also leaves within the frame. She has the bullwhip and red shoes, so who's in control of this moment? Sheila Free Bright, a photographer here, she's here today, but she's also looking and engaging and interrogating images of young girls and women, plastic bodies, the idea of breaking these images and creating stories about these young women and asking questions. Easter Sunday families, to women who decided to dance, become dance hall girls, and beauty contests in 1924 in California. And this is Pacific Beach, California. This is a panoramic image, 1924. This is an all-black town. The day after this photograph was taken, this beach house was burned. This frightened this white community that this is a community, a leisure community for black people to celebrate their lives, to have a chance to rest after work. The 4 women in the front won in terms of their beauty contest of the winners, but it frightened that racist community. And so these women and these men were lost after that community, but we could see how they worked together and created a sense of community within beauty. Cars were central. This is Mr. Robert McNeil's photograph in Virginia, 1940. Images here of Richard Roberts photographing a young woman who is visiting the studio, and then the next photograph that she has within the frame is the one that she desired. This is her work that she's sending north to a family that she's working within a home, and this is what she's preserving for her family and others. So images that were constructed, cross-dressers, performers, and I love this Wayne Miller photograph want only you. You know, it's like kind of this reading this, and then this gesture, like, who, me? You know, kind of moment. But it's just wonderful the way that he is dressed and uses the exaggerated posing of a woman and then also of a performer. Hairstyles were political as well, and this image here is called the double V. And this is part of the 1940s during the World War II, where women were reminded that the double V campaign, that we need to have victory at home and victory abroad when our soldiers return. So women wore dresses and pins and skirts that had the double V as a symbol and a signifier. Other beauty contests in Philadelphia, and this is a church beauty contest in the South, in Clarksville. This is in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and then Miss Black America. We see 1968, the range of images, the range of hairstyles, inspired by African-style dress to silk dresses. So this is the image where people were changing and calling out for another type of beauty contest, where Miss Black America was a central point. Fashion shows also were significant, posing. This is one of my favorites, and her name known as Fabulous. You know, Eleanor Stribling. But self-naming, it was an important point also for Black people when they began to change their names in terms of how they thought about themselves, from African names to a name like Fabulous. Louis Armstrong about to go on stage, a photographic moment of beauty. And here again, you know, just Miles Davis, you know, just understanding his clothing, his closet, and the range of clothes that he presented. Sunday morning, you know, Sunday morning with the minister, haircut, you know, Carrie Mae Weems again, and then Objects of Beauty, you know, by Joy Gregory. And so the range that happened with different types of beauty images that were central to African American communities and documented by a range of photographers who looked at Black communities' shared moments of beauty, where images transformed the idea of women. Renee Cox created an image called Rajay in terms of taking over the world. She was seen as known as the Wonder Woman's half-sister, you know, just there waiting to save the world and using beauty. This image here by a photographer who lives in Angola, and this is called Venice Merchants of Venice, you know, photographing young men who leave Senegal to sell, his name is Kilawanji Henda, selling the objects that people desire when they arrive to buy labels and brands. Hank Willis Thomas' photograph, the branded heads that were branded also by objects like Nike. Images here, the Queen of Paris. Images here of mother and daughter exchange by Sheila Free Bright. Clothes to wear, what are the perfect clothes to wear, which ones the mother wants the daughter to wear, which ones the daughter decides. You can all imagine. Image here by Violet Ross Smith, and it's called My Kind of People. And looking at young girl who is dressed in different ways and how she is perceived by the way she looks and accepted in certain communities. And a self-portrait of Violet Ross Smith with the same type of image, My Kind of People. What do you see when you see these different faces and looks? And so these are just kind of ranges, and I want to clip through a few more because I know that it's getting a little late, as Gambo was about to come on. So, and this image here, this is Lauren Kelly's image, and it's really called Picking, and it's looking at the power of hair, the power of the pick, and how the pick was an empowerful moment, and she creates this crown with pick. this image here by Jessica Ingram, you know, just a wonderful moment of a haircut, you know, where we see a young man who's proud, showing the portrait of President Obama with change. And a wall, a woman, girl, and hoop earrings, and door knock earrings.
Oh.
So we begin to see girl and pearl earrings, and we see this young photographer who's looking at the history of art and range of images such as this. And then this image here by Hank Willis Thomas looking at I Am a Man, this kind of staunch moment where men are looking and telling the story of the 1968 march. And then Hank also creating a moment of I Am a Man to these images that are empowered and disempowering. And then finally, I just would like to end with Sue Ross's image here of Erin Neville. When we think of sound and we think of beauty and we see how she was able to document this moment and to see how we pose beauty through sound and through the experience of Erin Neville's music from the 1960s to today. But I would like for us just to experience one more video. Is White here, or how can we do this? Okay. And this is a video that's in the exhibition, but to see it in this room would be just a moment to imagine.